What's going on? How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I have a slight eye irritation that's causing me to be very blind in one eye, but other than that, I'm okay.
How'd you get an eye irritation?
I imagine it's from my contact lenses probably being overused or not sanitized or something. I don't know, but it's preventing me from comfortably looking at any screens. So I'm very happy that we decided to do this format, because I could just look at the ground while we have this conversation.
I think that's excellent.
Yeah, a lot's been going on, Mike. I got to thank you for joining in on that little surprise party that Tara put together for me. That was fun. Where were you that day? Seemed like you were traveling.
I was I was coming home, so we'll get into that in a little bit. But I was down in Williamsburg and Jamestown for the weekend, and I was driving up through Virginia. I think that when we were talking, I was right on 495, if you know where that is, as it goes around DC.
Okay.
And so I haven't been. I used to live there. That's right. Where I used to live, and so I haven't been there. For I don't know, 20 years, to be able to go and see, one, how much that landscape has changed, but then also like recognizing how much I've changed since then. You know, that's always a cool thing, in my opinion. Like when you have these opportunities to see how and where you've grown, because, you know, and I guess this is kind of an appropriate thing to say now, because, you know, they're when you're just living being you, you know, you always feel like you don't feel yourself when you grow, but you need a point of reference. And so since we did that birthday party, birthdays are traditionally like, you know, an excellent time to kind of reflect where you are. And so I had that experience, as did you. So where are we? Bring me up to speed. You had an interesting story to tell me. I saw the pictures online of you with that bird.
Yeah.
Do you want to begin there, or do you want to talk a little bit about your birthday for a bit?
Yeah, we could start there, because that happened on Friday. My birthday was on this past Monday. So for folks...
How old did you turn?
I turned 27, which is the first Saturn Return I've been hearing. People have been telling me that, right?
You're getting into it, yeah. That's usually around 29, but okay. It's, you know, it represents something like bigger than like an exact transit, if you will. It's like a transitional time, right. Age 29. So it is my opinion that when someone is aware that a Saturn return even exists, and so what a Saturn return is, if you don't know what that is, if you're listening, Saturn is in the same place in the heavens as it was when you were born. Another way of thinking about it is like Saturn completed an orbit, if that in fact is a actual description of the model in which we see, but it occurs every 29 and a half years. It's one of the reasons why Saturn is at least in a certain, to one degree, is in harmony or resonance with the moon, because they're both on this kind of like 29-day, 29-year cycle. But from an experiential astrological model, the Saturn return is always a time of a transition into like greater maturity, maturity is probably the right word, of becoming more grounded in your material reality, of just like being alive and being a human being and everything that comes along with it. Sometimes that can be very disruptive, and sometimes it can be very grounding. The disruptiveness, you could look at it in terms of, do you have any hard aspects to your Saturn? Like, you know, if your Saturn square your sun or something along that, it would imply that it's going to be like your Saturn returns are going to be really intense areas of growth, or it can be a little bit more, a little bit smoother, and that could show itself as like really like grounding into to more maturity, a more mature role, however you want to define mature, in your life. So the fact that you're aware of it, the fact that you're looking at that lens of your life and your journey, like, okay, I'm stepping into this period of time, to me, that is an indication, both symbolically and literally, of becoming aware of your life as a journey. You know, we said in the beginning about, it's hard to see growth when you are just like living in the present moment. And there's something really, really powerful about being present, but then at the same time to step out of the presentness, to step out of flow and to look and reflect, that always provides a different view of your life and your life trajectory and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something, I hope people listen to this take away from our conversations, is that, life is a journey. Take it upon yourself to make it a fun one, But yeah, certainly a lot has changed, but no turmoil yet. So we'll see.
Well, it's not it's a time frame. So it's like one of these things. Like what I would recommend is like having an awareness of this period of one's life, and then usually through life is going to unfold as life is going to unfold. But then to the power of reflection, the power of contemplation is like to go and you look back and like, wow, I was here and now I'm that, and now I'm there, and look how I've changed, and look how I've grown, and look how I faced challenges, and look how I lost this battle, but it actually brought me somewhere else, or I thought I won this battle, but the long run, like. It's not so much about doing the right thing as much as it is about becoming aware. At least that's my thought as it. And I'll even say this, not to be contradictory to you, but I think it's to each person to decide if their journey, like, to have fun. Like, not everyone's about having fun. In fact, Saturn, in a way, isn't about having fun. It's about more so about responsibility. And so it's about, you take whatever approach you want to take. Just realize like this is my approach. Some people have more of that like happy go or positive or fun outlook. I mean, I think that certainly serves everyone, but it is ultimately the power of perspective and awareness is that you begin to see things in a bigger picture.
Yeah.
And it's your unique experience.
Well, I've had a very unique experience the past 7 days. So, yeah, maybe we'll get into that, because I think awareness is certainly a part of it in many different ways. So, I'll take us back. We last spoke Wednesday, minus, last time we spoke on the podcast was last Wednesday. The episode number 4 came out that Thursday, and then that Friday, about 5 days ago now, we decided we were going to go apple picking, right? It's fall. We want to make an apple pie potentially, stuff like that. So we set out to go apple picking, and we didn't have an apple orchard in mind, but we decided we'd look for one along the Hammonasset line. Now, I told you a little bit about the Hammonasset line, I think on episode 2, and you told me I should buy a book called The Gaia Matrix by Peter Shampoo, right? Well, I bought that.
Is that how you pronounce it? It's spelled with a CH. It's a French spelling. It's not like what you put in to clean your hair.
Right. And you're the third person to pronounce it that way, so, or maybe, I don't know if that's how you originally pronounce it, but other people have also pronounced it that way.
I never pronounced his name. I don't know how to say it, but I like the shampoo. I struggle with a lot of words, and particularly foreign words. So I'm going to stick with shampoo, but I don't know if that's the actual pronunciation. But nonetheless, go on with the story. So you got the Gaia Matrix?
I got the book. So, this Friday, we didn't have the book yet. I'm just bringing that up as a side note because the Hammonasset ley line is something that we've been really interested in studying, and you suggested that I get this book.
And I love how you are tying it into like as an idea. You know, there's this ley line, and this is where it is, and then it becomes personal in the fact that you're like, oh, well, we're going to go apple. We want to go to an apple orchard. Well, let's see if we can go and find something on this line. Like, you know, that's an awareness, and it's bringing that level of awareness into your actual life, in what I would say would be like a really fun and kind of human way.
It was, yeah. We got into it. We got some apples. We were trying to find an organic apple farm, but it's like it's an odd thing when you ask people about when you ask farmers about, you know, whether their food is organic or not, because there's a lot of licensing and certification that goes along with becoming USDA organic. So a lot of farmers kind of get upset, and they're like, you know what? They like take it as an insult to the quality of their food. Like, we don't have to jump through all these hoops to be organic, you know, like that kind of mentality. So my thought was like, no, don't ask. And Tara asks, and I think they said something along the lines of, oh, we use chemicals, but they're no more toxic than, you know, the stuff you clean your house with. And I'm like, well, there's a lot of toxins in the household cleaners, so that's not exactly comforting. But, you know, either way, that was like the minimum qualification. More importantly, we were looking to find an apple orchard on the Hammonasset ley line, because, you know, either way, if we eat a couple GMO apples once, no big deal. Every other time we buy organic. So we got 6 apples. It was kind of a small orchard, wasn't really too exciting, but we got 6 apples, and we moseyed on. We're like, all right, well, that wasn't organic, so let's just maybe we'll find an organic farm. So Tara goes on her phone. We start driving. She's looking up organic farms, and we're just kind of taking in the day. It's beautiful fall New England day, and obviously, rivers, big point of interest, as well as the ley line. So we're driving along this river, and I look at the map, and I see, oh, it's the Quinnipiac River. You know, this is a interesting river. You know, we've been bottling river water every chance we get. We have one from the Farmington River. We have one from the Connecticut River, and we have one from the Aspetuck River, which is a very small river compared to the other two. And then we have one from a waterfall that bleeds into the Housatonic River. So this would be our 5th bottle of water from the Quinnipiac River, you know, just trying to gather the energies, so to speak, into these little glass bottles. So we go to the bridge, and it's a walking bridge that used to be, you know, for carriages and so forth before they built the actual road bridge that is next to this bridge. And we stopped and looked at the sign, because that's another part of this whole thing, is being very aware of all the little details, even the minute ones. You know, something as simple as a plaque or a sign telling you who built the bridge can lead you. And hang with me, because I think this is super interesting.
So you totally speak my language. Like, I love this stuff. So go on. So you see the plaque, and it.
Yes, we see the plaque, and we see that it was built by the Berlin Iron Bridge Company. Now, Berlin, for those who don't know, is a town in Connecticut. I knew that because I used to deliver packages in Berlin, and I liked it there. It was a very quaint town. The houses were spread apart just far enough so that you didn't really have to like walk too much. It was more of a driving route than a walking route. So it was one of my preferred areas to deliver when I was a delivery guy. And I really just got in touch with that part of the state. It just felt like the energy there was interesting. So I take note of that. I'm like, oh, the Berlin Iron Bridge Company. And it says that this company has built over 600 bridges. The farthest one is all the way in Texas. So they're pretty prolific. You know, in the 1800s, they were building all these bridges. So took note of that. And the other thing that was very strange, it's a red bridge, painted red. It's iron. And on all 4 sides, right at the entranceways, there are pine cones, you know, like they have at the Vatican. that like pine cone symbol for the pineal gland.
So like a three-dimensional sculpture of a pine cone, or like a carving of the pine cone?
A three-dimensional, almost like a cap, you know, like you would like a flagpole, the top of a flagpole, kind of ornamental.
Okay.
And coming out of each perimeter of the bridge, you know, on both sides of the entrance.
I believe that's finial.
What's that?
I believe that what you're describing, that's called the cap. It's called a fin. They're not the architectural term for that. But go on.
Okay, so taking note of all these things, Tara points out the pine cones, and you know, she's like, "Oh, it's the pineal gland symbol." I'm like, "You're right on with that, yeah." So we bottled up some water and looked up in the sky. Beautiful birds flying around. It was just, you know, a big soup of details here that I'm trying to get together. But we just took it all in, you know. There was nothing like that's kind of the point I want to make, is like you don't always have to be necessarily looking for explicit clues. Sometimes the clues will come up afterwards, right? So we're there and we leave, and we left with our water, and we kept on going, and we were like, all right, let's go find an organic farm. Now, maybe I should sidetrack here, because last night I was looking into that bridge company a little further just to see if there was anything interesting maybe we missed at that particular bridge. And it turns out that this bridge company has a bridge that they built over the Susquehanna River in a place called Anuaga. And Anuaga is named for an Iroquois settlement that was there before the Revolutionary War. And this Iroquois settlement had a mix of the Six Nations tribes. There was, you know, various different tribes, and the Lenape people were one of those tribes that happened to be a part of this Wanaga settlement. So, you know, I look at that and I'm like, wow, all right, that's cool. Let me go a little further. Who was behind the disbanding of this settlement? A man named Joseph Brandt. So I'm like, Joseph Brandt, who's this jerk? You know, I look into this guy thinking he's some British guy. So Joseph Brandt was actually a Mohawk. Mm-hmm. Have you heard of him before?
Yeah, I know who Joseph Brandt is. So he's a big name in history.
Right. So I had no idea who this guy was, but it turns out that where this Onawaga Lenticular Truss Bridge was built, the same company that built the one that Tara and I happened upon, was where this man Joseph Brandt had a settlement of you know, his people mixed with some British people. They were fighting with the British against the colonists. So essentially, you know, on the side of the opposite side of the American Revolution. And his name was Thayan Danega in Mohawk, which means one who places two bets together. So he, you know, AKA
Did you say bets or beds? B-E-D or B-E-T?
Bets. So he's the type of guy who doubles down. He ties
right.
two bets together, right? So because in those days, if you made a bet, you would literally tie, you know, what you were wagering to what the other person had wagered, right? You would tie them together. That was like a significant way to go about something like that in those days. So it's just, you know, examining the little like snapshot shot of history and how this bridge connects to this bridge. I just thought that was maybe a tangent, a huge tangent, but just an interesting connection, really. You know, this bridge company has a bridge over the Quinnipiac in the Quinnipiac Gorge as it comes through the mountains and heads down towards New Haven. Now, the first time Tara and I had bottled...
Can I interrupt you?
Please,
can I interrupt you for a second? So go more into like to the two bets and like the taking down of what was it? There was a village there, and then the village was disbanded. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah. So this village, the Anuaga settlements, Iroquois village, it was, sort of a stronghold in the sense that when Native Americans were being kicked out of their homes by colonists, they would kind of refugee there. So it became a refugee place.
There are a bunch of places like that here in Lancaster. So, and the name of the two bets, was that the Algonquin of Joseph, like his name, like in not the angelicized like Joseph Brandt, or is that two separate people? I'm a little confused.
Oh no, sorry. Yeah, that is his name given to him by his Mohawk relatives. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And somewhere along the line, he was adopted by British parents or raised, to learn from British people somehow.
Right. Is that the two bets tied together? Like if you think about that, like it's in terms of like, this is a person who's kind of like betting on two different sides. Like, well, who am I betting? Like, am I betting on the French? Am I betting on the British? Am I betting on the colonists? Like in terms of what direction? What do you do when like the land which you call home is suddenly invaded, and the invasion's not going to stop? So who do I align with? Like, I would imagine that's got to be part of the mentality if that was your experience, if that's what you're living.
Right, and it's interesting. It's interesting to find this out too. And I'll connect it all back because part of my research recently has been about my area, Connecticut, and this guy, Joseph Brandt, he's from, I think a little bit lower than Cooperstown area. So it's like the New York part of the Susquehanna River where he particularly lived at this point in time. But he was from the Ohio River Valley and died in Canada. So this was just towards the midpoint of his life. But the Mohawk Indians were very legendary all across the East Coast for being brave warriors, brutal warriors. And it's interesting because they had all of these alliances with the British, the Germans, and the different colonists. They almost saw the colonists more of an equal than they did their fellow indigenous tribes, because where I'm from, there's the Housatonic River. And I think I mentioned this on this podcast. I was like, I don't know what the Housatonic means, and I want to find it out. Well, I found out that the actual name of the river is the Putatuck River, and that is given its name from a very well-known, prominent chief who was sort of like the patriarch of many different clans that all settle along this river. But one thing I learned while I was researching this Housatonic River is that when the Mohawk Indians would come, the Putatuck Indians had a series of mountains where they could convey a message over 200 miles within 2 to 3 hours through a series of calls and alerts. Because, in those times, if the Mohawk showed up, you had to pay them tribute, or they would take your whole tribe, clan hostage and kill all the men and take the women and children. So it was very, the Mohawk were very different than this kind of Thanksgiving idea that we have of indigenous people. Like, well, yeah, they were all nice and hunting, and we came along and we screwed it all up for them and got them sick. I feel like you either get the whitewashed pre or post World War II version of Native Americans, where they were just happy-go-lucky hunter-gatherers who, got squashed by modern times. And then, pre-World War II, the narrative was well, they were so savage and they didn't, only the ones that went with Christianity were worth saving, and the rest were just savages. So neither of those explanations are true, and I think that's what's become so fascinating is understanding the true history of the people that were here before the colonists came. So yeah, this Joseph Brandt guy, definitely very interesting. I mean, to put yourself, in his shoes, being born in a place that's being actively invading, and then having to almost like pick sides. To him, it seemed like probably the British were the better choice to go with, I'm sure, because they had done this kind of thing before, where they would go and colonize and make friends with the tribes and use the tribes to sort of get as much information as they could. Whereas I think like the Puritans and the other colonists, the ones that came here for more religious reasons, and this is speculation, folks, I think that they were just more suspicious of the indigenous people in general, after you get into a few miscommunications, and then, they come along and chop some heads off. It's like, all right, we're going to write them off completely. They're savages. No dealing with them anymore. Like, that's kind of understandable. I mean, from the European perspective in that colonial era, like, indigenous people were so different, and not in a, as we can read in textbooks. I mean, some of these books I have that I've been reading through, they basically say that the Indians were ignorant sloths, and they could never get it together, and just all of these really insulting things they would say about them. But it's really just a comparative I don't think they were able to stand in their shoes. They really just didn't identify them as human beings. It seemed like there was a big separation between who they were and who the indigenous people were, and that led to a lot of separation. But this is a big tangent from my story about a bird. What are your thoughts?
So you're the timing of this conversation is perfect. I just got off, before you and I started talking, I just recorded a show with Roz Ben, and it was a follow-up to an earlier presentation which Roz did, all about this what he calls balling, ball worship, BAAL. And he kind of like paints this very, very complex, like, retelling of historical narratives, going back to starting, at least that's where he picks up on the story, in ancient Egypt, and then going throughout, like, the Mediterranean area during the Middle Ages, and like just this kind of complexity of different cultures and different, like, all of these different ways of which people were. And the reason why it's so interesting, because his telling of the story really sets the stage of the colonization of what we call now North America, and what North America was. But in his analysis, and everything which I've read really supports it. He's just, he's done an amazing job connecting a lot of lines for me. But it deals with the fact that these histories, these complexities between, different groups of people, it goes way, way far back. So that when you look at a section of the story we're told of humanity, and who knows how true any of it is, but it's complex, and it's much, much, much deeper. And we've been given this, like, as you said, like a watered down version of understanding things. But the truth of the matter is it's really complex. It's not as simple as seeing good guy, bad guy, or this or that. And if you want to wrap your mind around it, you have to realize that we come at it with so much indoctrinational bias, and then also cultural bias, and all this different stuff. And like, the one thing I want to say is, like, you're absolutely right. Like, it's not easy to separate all of these different perspectives, and to be flexible and to look at it from all of these different ways is, I think, a really good way of trying to understand the future. You need to understand the past, sort of thing. So I think this is, you're bringing up great points, and if you haven't listened to Ross's presentation, and I think it was episode 11 of From the 40th Parallel, definitely go and hear what he's got to say, because it ties into all of this.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, I've definitely said this 100 times on my podcast and maybe even this one, but yourself and Ross Ben, huge inspirations for me in endeavoring to look into this stuff. And when Ross and I met about a month ago or so, 2 months now, one of the things that he asked me as we were wandering around Wissahickon Creek was, so tell me about Connecticut. What's the Connecticut mystery? And I felt very unprepared to be asked that. So since then, I've gone out of my way to really hone in on that. So I said all of what I said about the Quinnipiac River because Tara and I were drawn to this location. Okay, we did not plan on going there. Like I said, we totally randomly happened upon it. Really, the apple orchard was very close to this bridge, so that's, why we were there. But either way, we go to this cool bridge, and instead of just dismissing it as just another bridge, it stuck out. I took a picture of it. It was kind of strange looking, and sure enough, there's connections loosely to this other place that involves indigenous people and their history. So yeah, that was worth investigating. I didn't find anything, crazy like, oh, and this bridge has a, adrenochrome in the paint recipe. It's not always gonna be that wild, but it's still worth looking into. So that day, like I said, Quinnipiac River, let's leave that there because we're gonna come back to it. So that day we're like, all right, first apple orchard, not exactly what we were looking for. Let's see what else is out there. So we're driving and we go through a town called Meriden, Connecticut. Now, as this is all going on, we're listening to Court Lindahl talk about, ley lines and different building alignments. And Court Lindahl, he's very interesting. He's a little dry the way he talks because he's kind of monotone, but he's very, very interesting and he's very knowledgeable about the ley lines. So I'm like, this is perfect. Let's listen to Liz. And he keeps saying over and over, meridian points, meridian lines. And then we are driving through this town called Meriden. When Tara and I are like, Meriden, meridian, Meriden. Okay, that's interesting, right? And you look at the map of Connecticut, Meriden's, boom, smack in the middle, okay? It's right in the middle of the state. And it's not just right in the middle of the state. It's right on this sort of mountain chain that it's not quite the Appalachian Mountains, but it's sort of like a older, because everything east of the Appalachian Mountains is much older than everything west of the Appalachian Mountains. So we have some strange sort of mountain chains here. And one of them is called the Hanging Hills. It's, what mountain range it's in, I don't know. But it's the Hanging Hills, and it's like a red rock sort of cliff face that just juts up out of this one little town above a pond and a river. And that's where Meriden is. Again, side note. So I'm like, all right. Let's go to this organic farm. We had two choices. We could have went to one on the eastern side of the state. We could have went to one on the western side of the state. So for whatever reason, I'm like, let's go to the one in Bethlehem, Connecticut. And secretly, it was because there's a grocery store near over there that I wanted to go to. So I didn't tell Tara that because she was all about going to the farm that day. She didn't want to go grocery shopping. But I had my own secret plans of maybe stopping at this organic grocery store. So again, adding to the whole randomness of the day, we're driving through Morris, Connecticut. All right, and I know I'm hitting people with a lot of names, but that's all right. Just know that where we were at the apple orchard and where we are in Morris, both of those towns are on the Hammonasset line that we've been investigating, right? So we're driving along on our way to Bethlehem, and it's one of those days where I'm like not the best driver in the sense that I'm distracted and I'm not paying attention to the GPS as much as I could, which is fine because, we're not in a rush or anything. So naturally, I probably missed a few turns, and we were off schedule as to Google would have expected us to be there by. But I'm so glad we were, because as we were passing by this nursery and a farm, we see off to the left of the road a great blue heron. Okay, and for those who don't know what a great blue heron is, it's a very large bird, maybe one of the largest wading birds in our state. It's about 4 feet tall. It has a wingspan of about 5.5 feet when it's fully grown, and its beak is like a 4-inch dagger. It uses its long neck to and beak to catch fish and all sorts of other creatures. But you see them flying in the sky, and they're really beautiful. They got these long necks, and they curl them up against their chest when they fly, and they have these long legs that kind of dangle behind them. So they're really interesting birds, and they're very elusive. If you see one in the river hunting, or you see one, you happen to walk near one on a trail, they'll immediately fly away. They're not the type. They're not like a turkey. They're not going to hang around. So it was a rare, thing to see a great blue heron that close to the road. I'm like, that's not normal. There's no way this bird just decided it's going to stand on the side of the road. And it did seem like it was struggling a bit. So my, instincts kick in, animal hero mode. And I've been the type to do this, save animals. It's probably a dozen or so animals that I've brought to like a vet or whatever, just life happens and you're in the right place and you can help an animal out. I never turn that opportunity down, and this was no different. So we pulled a quick U-turn and pulled over. And this is a busy road. It's not like a country road. It's a busy road in the country. So people are going 50 miles an hour flying by, and the bird is just like probably totally freaked out. So I'm as calm as I could be. I get out of my car, very calm, walk over to him, and he sees Tara and I, and he starts flapping his wings to get away, but he can't take off. So I'm like, oh, okay, I see. He's got a broken leg. Because birds, when they're flapping their wings, they need to give themselves a nice hop to catch that wind. Otherwise, they're not going anywhere, And the more he flapped his wings, the further forward he leaned into this bush. So I'm like, oh, God. And he's going into the bush more and more as we're trying to get closer to him. And he ends up like really digging himself into this bush. So I get down on my hands and knees and I start crawling through this bush, pulling prickers off and getting the prickers out of the way. And I get down to where me and this bird are like 2 feet from each other under a bush. And, like I said, this bird's got a 4-inch beak dagger. So the whole time I'm thinking like, this thing's going to stab me in the face if I'm not careful. And it was going for bites. It's trying to bite me because it doesn't know that I'm trying to save him. It's just like, oh, God, I'm about to die. This big human's going to eat me, So he's trying to like... It's
actively trying to bite you or to poke you. That's what you're saying?
It was basically like how it had fallen into this bush. Imagine a very large bush, on the side of a marsh. Okay, we're in a bush that's as tall as me, and I've crouched into the base of it, so all the sticks and leaves are above my head, and in this little space, yes, it's just me and this bird, and every time I kind of go and to put my hand near it, he goes to bite my hand until I kind of just really calmed down and really just got as centered as I could, really tried to breathe deep and just project that inner calm energy. Not that I'm, claiming to be animal psychic or anything like that, but I do think that there's a level of intuition that animals have, and they can sense whether you're nervous or scared or angry. So I just tried to calm myself as much as I could and just gently stroked his feathers and his back to reassure him that I was not here to hurt him. And I look behind me, and Tara's there, and I'm like, you know, what are we going to do? You know, I can't get this thing out of here. So she runs back to the car, and she grabs a towel. And by the time she comes back with the towel, I had kind of stroked his feathers back so that his wings were on its side rather than all flailed out. So now I was able to get my hands around his body with his wings without, you know, him being able to flap them, but he wasn't uncomfortable either. It's normal resting position for a bird. And I pick him up by both hands, and boom, snap, he snaps his beak right towards my face, Mike. And, you know, these animals have like a foot-long neck that they curl up. It's like a snake, you know, like literally like a snake coming at you with a big sharp knife. So it was really like, okay, you know, now I'm not calm because I tried to calm myself down, and then now this thing's trying to attack me, and I'm like, dude, I'm trying to save you. What are you know, it's like that kind of back and forth between me and the bird. And just in the nick of time, Tara comes with the towel. I'm like, put it on the ground. She puts the towel on the ground, and I put the bird down on the towel, and I kind of wrapped him in the towel so he couldn't flail and spread his wings when we pulled him out of the bush. And also, I didn't want his feathers or wings to get caught on any of these little sticks and prickers that were in this bush. So I navigate him out of the bush head first, like with my arms as extended as I can so that he's, you know, unable to stab me, right? Because the whole time he's like stretching his head around, moving his head, trying to bite me, trying to move his head, trying to get free. And,
is it making noise?
Oh yeah. He's going squawk, squawk. And when they make this call, their whole neck, like, because their neck is very fragile, you know, it's very light, thin bones in their neck, and they expand when they make this call, like you know, it's like a reed instrument, you know, the way the air moves through it, and I could see it like vibrating, and the little feathers on his neck would like stand out. It was very interesting to see all that detail so close, because like I said, these birds are so elusive. You barely get a good look at them unless you're in, you know, the scientific position to study them and capture them and whatever those, you know, bird scientists do to them. So I'm really in awe how beautiful this bird is, because it's you know, it's not like a small bird. It's very large, kind of formidable. And yeah, making a lot of noise, stretching his neck. So I come out of this bush, and, you know, like I said, this is a busy road. People are driving by. Nobody stops, but everybody kind of look to see, like, what the heck is this guy doing, you know? Because I have a huge 4-5 foot long bird in my hand. So I'm like, all right, Tara, get in the car. You drive. I sit in the back seat. She opens the door for me, and I get in the back seat, and I'm just kind of holding on, hoping that this guy doesn't freak out in the back seat of the car. Luckily, he was very, very calm once he got in the car. I think he either realized, like, I'm not getting out of here, can't fly out of here, or maybe his depth perception was off, you know, because the seat was black, so he's kind of just staring into the blackness of my car seat. And we're at this point, we're like, all right, where the heck do we bring them? Because it's a Friday, it's getting late, it's dinner time, you know, people, the vets and all these different animal rescue places, they're not open. So we're calling, we go to this animal rescue place, and it's an abandoned lot. on Google it says animal rescue, but you show up there and it's literally like a parking lot. No building, just like 3 or 4 apartment buildings and like an old bodega, but no animal rescue place. So I'm like, what the hell? And I'm like losing my cool, because I got this bird in my hands. Tara's on the phone. She's also driving, and we're in a pretty busy part of the state. You know, it's funny. Connecticut's like an odd mix. You could be 10 minutes you're in the middle of nowhere, and then the next 10 minutes you're like right in a busy road in a busy city. So we're in this kind of like, I would call it a ghetto. Bristol, Connecticut is pretty much a ghetto. And I'm like, why the hell did we come here? Of course, they're not going to be able to help a heron in the middle of the ghetto. So I'm kind of getting mad at Tara because, you know, it's not her fault. It's a high stress situation. She doesn't know off the top of her head where to bring a freaking hurt heron, you know. So I'm like, we need to go to a farm. We need to go to a place that already has animals right now, you know. So she goes into her phone, and whatever it was, intuition, grace, she called a farm that happens to also rehabilitate birds. Just the first chance she calls this place Stony Brook Farm. And it's funny because there's a brewery in Connecticut called Stony Creek, and their logo is a great blue heron. So I thought that was an odd connection. But either way, we call this farm, and the woman who owns the farm is like, oh my gosh, yes, bring the bird as soon as you can. We can help it. So I'm like, wow, what a relief. So we drive like 40 minutes into this kind of rural part of the state onto a farm, and we get there. And
hold on, let me ask you a question. Is the bird is the bird calm in the car now? You've been driving for a while. Does it remain calm?
Yeah, the bird, it was funny. The bird was very calm. I started to shake a little bit because, you know, I'm holding my arms extended for a long period of time. My arms started to shake, so I'm like, oh God, I hope I don't make this bird nervous, because now I'm shaky, like really shaky.
Are you still holding the bird, or did you just place it in the back?
I couldn't place him because he had one good leg and one broken leg, and he was trying to use that good leg to like get himself up, you know. So where I had him held, both legs were kind of relaxed, and he couldn't like stand up. But it, you know, you've seen them; they're very tall birds. If he was standing on my back seat, his head would be touching the ceiling. So it was kind of.
But you were actively engaged with the bird for that 40-minute car ride, like you're holding it.
An hour, I would say probably an hour and a half. I was in this car holding this bird. Yeah, and it's like 4, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, like the time of day when everyone's going home from work. So we're like in traffic too, and people are. So
you're driving, and
people are like trying to cut us off too, because Tara was taking it easy, and yeah, people are crazy the way they drive. It's Connecticut, and one person, it was funny. They like go to like flip us off because I don't know, they were upset with the way we were driving compared to them, and they see that I'm holding a bird, and their whole face just goes like, what the heck is that? And just like the finger, like they couldn't even give me the finger because they were so shocked.
What do they call the finger? What's the other word for the finger?
The bird.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, so she couldn't even give us the bird because I was holding the bird, and
exactly, you trumped them.
Yeah, so we make it to this farm, and like on our way there, Tara and I are kind of like, this road looks familiar. You know, it's like a little off the beaten path road. And I think we had actually been down that road before, funny enough. So we get to this farm, and Rosa, the person who we spoke to on the phone, said, Hawk will be there. Meet up with Hawk. So I'm like, Hawk? Who's Hawk?
All right. Exactly. I'm on the edge of my seat. So keep going.
So Hawk comes out of the barn and very, I would say androgynous, but Tara was like, oh, that's a man. You know, I thought it was a woman, to be honest, but this person, Hawk, is very androgynous, even down to the name. Like a long hair tied into a long ponytail, and sort of like just an androgynous face, hard to tell, and body too, because they're sort of elderly, a little older, maybe 50s, 60s, 70s. Not that 50s is elderly, but they were kind of on the aging side of things towards the end of their life. But yeah, the androgyny part, I only bring that up because of the name Hawk and the fact that Native American people classically are known for not growing facial hair, right? So it's a genealogical trait. They don't grow facial hair. So that, in hindsight, Tara and I were talking like, was Hawk a man or a woman? And I'm like, well, maybe he's an indigenous guy because he just doesn't have facial hair. So my first thought is that he kind of looked like a more rugged woman. But on hindsight, he's probably, a Native American. Anyways, total side note, we get out of the car and Hawk's there, and Hawk's like, hey, I was just feeding the horses. And he's like, what do you got here? And I pull out the bird, and he's in my hands. I'm trying to keep him in the car because as soon as the bird comes out into the open air, he's like escape mode, trying to flap his wings, trying to get away from me, trying to peck at me. But he was a little calmer towards me by then. But as soon as we pull him out of the car, the bird goes boom, straight for Hawk. Like, I'm talking an inch from Hawk's face. This bird, like, whoosh, pecked at him. And this guy / girl, not sure, didn't even flinch. Like, they had seen this happen, 100 times before. So it was really beautiful the way it worked out because, at that point, with all the stress and the energy, it was such a relief to know that we were bringing the bird somewhere. It was going to be taken care of and helped. And Hawk, again, was like, oh, yeah, I've seen this before. So he takes the doves that they had out of their little dove coop, and we put the great blue heron inside of the dove coop, and there was just enough room for him to stand up and kind of spread his wings. And he took a big shit on my car right before we took the towel off of him. It just all over the back of my car. Luckily, the outside of my car, not the inside of my car. And his leg was bleeding a little bit, and the blood got on my shoes. I noticed that there's bird blood on my boots now forever. So yeah, it was, and I was really moved. I definitely cried a little bit because I'm like, wow, not only is it a relief, but it was just like really, I was just really happy that we were able to help that bird. And it's not like it's an endangered species or anything. There's plenty of herons; they're doing fine. But it was just, most people would just drive by and say, oh, there's a bird on the side of the road and not think anything of it. But, Tara and I, we couldn't not help it, and we were going to find a place to bring it no matter what. And we did. And it was just synchronicity that brought us to the people who were actually able to do something about it and actually help them. It just, yeah, it was profound.
Can I ask you some questions?
Please, yeah.
Okay, so the first question I have is, what did Hawk have to say to you about just like you getting the bird to Hawk and just the whole uncommonness of someone showing up with a wild blue heron? Did Hawk have any comments like, "Wow, that's an impressive feat," or "You're lucky you didn't get stabbed," or anything like that?
No, Hawk was very you like on point with like, okay, we need to do this, then we need to do this. The most
right, non-plus, like just like this is his life to show or Hawk's life, and like
seen it all before, and
right.
But he or she did comment, saying like, wow, it's really great that there are humanitarians like yourselves who are willing to go and help an animal out like this. A lot of times there aren't people to help, and there's not enough experts and professionals to do it. So yeah, they were very, very happy that we were able to help. And yeah, they seemed, as emotional as Tara and I were getting, they seemed very like detached from it. Like, they do this kind of thing a lot. And
this is their path.
Yeah.
This is their path.
But Hawk was very, very appreciative and very, again, very professional. I don't, not that that's the right word to use, but it just seemed like he knew,
not emotionally vested.
Right. They knew exactly what to do, and they were going to do it. And then they called a vet, an avian vet, who actually was able to drive down there that same night. And they took the bird to an aviary rehabilitation center for a splint and some recovery for the next few weeks. And apparently there's a tradition, whenever a bird, gets injured, they do like a release. And everybody who's kind of a part of this aviary rehabilitation center and people who come there and donate, they're all welcome to come for like the ceremony to release the bird back into the wild. So Tara and I are
Will you be part of?
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. We definitely want to go down there if we can make it, for sure. Yeah, I would love to
I would say if I were you, I would make that event the primary event for like that week, or like don't let something else like take precedence over that. Like this is because this is going to be the bookend. The release is the bookend.
Right.
So did they give you any? Are you in? Do you have a way of getting staying in contact with those folks to make certain that when that release ceremony is going to be?
Yeah, we actually just spoke to them this morning, and that's how I found that out. But yeah, the woman that we originally called, we saved her number, and they were very nice. They let us look around their farm after we brought the bird there, and we walked around. They had every animal on their farm was a rescue except for one horse who had been born on the farm. They had goats, they had peacocks, they had these amazing golden pheasants from China. They had probably like 24 horses, 24 goats. So it was a good place to bring them. And yeah, we plan on going back to visit.
So let me go back because I really want to be certain about this. So the release ceremony, is this done by Hawk and the missus, or is this done by where the people who do the rehabilitation, who does the release?
Yeah, I don't want to say it's the Audubon Society. I'm not sure if it's the Audubon Society, but they are like the big, bird nonprofit people in the area. So I would imagine it's through them. But if not,
so they'll be doing that. Do they have an estimate for you for like when it's going to be, like in a couple weeks, couple months?
I have no
couple days.
Yeah, no, I imagine it's only a couple weeks, but from my, novice perspective on animal medicine, the bird's leg was very broken, like to the point where it looked like you could have just twisted it off and pulled it off. Like it was that could just be because birds' legs are very fragile, but yeah, it was very broken.
All right. So, is there more to the story? Because I've got a lot I want to comment on, but I want to make certain that we've gone to the conclusion of this portion of the story.
Yeah, I think that was like it was just a lot of energy. And then, after that, we kind of just drove home and we didn't end up going. I don't think we ended up being able to get any of the organic food that we were planning on getting that day from the farm. Can't remember if we stopped. Yeah, we did. We stopped at a grocery store, the one that I wanted to go to, but that's it. Yeah. So yeah, that was that day. And one of the really cool things that happened was before we actually even got our hands on the bird to help him into the car, and he dropped one of his feathers and Tara picked it up. So now we have a feather from our new friend. We named him Sassafras because he was very sassy with his biting and his his flapping of his wings. But yeah, it was. So now we have one of Sassafras's feathers.
You two are adorable together with your Sassafras.
So yeah, it was great.
All right. So we got a lot there. We got a lot to work with, my friend. Can I talk for a little bit?
That would be a huge relief.
All right. Okay. So let's go back to when we're a little bit before this. We went down a little bit of a tangent, and we're talking about Joseph Brandt. We were talking about just like histories and and all of that sort of stuff. So all of these human sort of interactions and all of this way, and particularly as we interpret and understand history and all that sort of stuff, those are all what I would call false reality. I'm not saying they don't happen, but it's false reality because they're based upon like stories and interpretations and meanings and stuff like that. What you just described to me, though, with the interaction with this bird is an interaction with what I will call baseline reality. like you said, like, you know, life brought you to this area. There are all these, like, a decision for this or that to go on your trip. But regardless of any of that, you crossed, not only did you see it, but you stopped and you had this experience. So just from that level, we're going to begin to look at this. This is Mark having, you know, we always have these opportunities, but life, baseline reality, for whatever reason, it is meeting you with this experience. And then if you were to go and compare this experience to the totality of experiences that you have had in, you know, your life, I'm going to make this assumption for you, but it's like you haven't really done this. You haven't saved like a huge bird before. Like, this is a novel, first of a kind sort of experience for you, correct?
Well, I will say I am the resident nature boy in my town. Definitely like had a reputation for being a huge animal lover ever since elementary school. I would like stop kids from stepping on bugs. That's how much I like really loved animals. I don't know if it was virtue signaling at that age, but yeah, I've always made a point to go out of my way to help animals. So, but never a huge bird like this. No.
Exactly. So that even within the continuity of your life, like of being an advocate for animals, like this would be an extreme experience.
Indeed.
Like this is special. Like, just like, you know, you're not comparing it to anything other than your life. And we can go and see, like, it's not convoluted. It naturally happened based upon the mysteries of life. So I'm setting the stage of, like, this is significant. This is significant. You could choose to see it as significant, or you could choose not to. But at least for this point of the conversation, I'm going to choose to really kind of focus in on this. So we're saying that's special. And we're also seeing this, the timing of it just so happens to align with the other part of our conversation. Like, it's your birthday. Like, this is already a marker in your life. You know, it's your 27th year. 27th is, you know, it's not, you know, we have a base 10 mathematics system. So like the 10s and the 20s and the 30s tend to be, we think of as more significant, but 27 does have a cultural reference with 27 Club. You know, it's the beginning of the Saturn Return, all these sort of things. So we're seeing this as, you know, the time. Let's, like, you know, start to paint the picture of what actually occurred, because when we're having these experiences, you know, we're like caught up in the flow of life. We don't necessarily look at it or appreciate it in terms of like what we're seeing. So we want to begin with that. All right, there's a whole bunch of things. I wish I would have taken mental notes. So where do I want to go next? So we start with the Heron. So generally speaking, how would you describe your body type?
I am what you would call in the Ayurvedic terms a Vata, which means that I have air and I think fire is Vata, but I am very tall, very thin. I think there's a physiological term for my type. It's called an ectomorph, somebody who's very tall and thin. Correct.
You have very long, lanky limbs. I too. You're just an extreme. Like, I have that body type as well. I'm ectomorphic, but you're like what? You're 6'3", 6'4"?
Oh, well, I don't want to try to exaggerate, folks. I am really 6'8". Sometimes people
You're 6'8". Yeah. You are 6'8". What percentage of the population is 6'8"? I'm going to say like 0.04%. So the point I'm trying to make is,
of them, they're all basketball players.
And all of them. So you have a very, very distinct body type. You know, one ectomorphic is less common. And then also, like, I'm 6 foot tall, so you're 6'8". Like, you know, you have an extreme version of this physical archetype. So how would you kind of describe, like, in the realm of the aviation kingdom of the winged ones, like, what's a heron? Like, how would you describe a heron relative to a chickadee, to even like a hawk or something like that?
Yeah.
A heron it's ectomorphic.
Absolutely, yeah. It's
got that really long neck. It's got the really long legs. It's got the long beak.
perfectly designed to wade through the water and spear fish and catch other little snakes and mice and other things that hang out along the river's edge. Frogs, toads, things like that. Herons actually, they can eat anything. They're very omnivorial.
So look at you. Look at your archetype in physical form, and then look at this rare event that you've had on a very important timing of your life, and then you can begin to see there's more reflection. There's more reflection between you and this blue heron. You're both, you have that, like, whatever ectomorphic may mean. Like, this is not like just a raven. This is not another type of bird. This is a bird where, particularly as I'm describing it, like, this is a symbol of you in a way, because this is what your body type is. This is your experience. This is your interaction with this bird, and we can begin to see, like, wow, how tightly aligned this seemingly random experience is. How it is a more deep reflection of you. You are having an interaction with it. You are reflecting it in all of these sort of ways, in a physical way, in a timing way, like, you happen to be there at the time it needed for all of these sort of things. So the next thing I want to point out is I was asking a lot about when do they think this release ceremony is going to be? Because I'm going to suggest to you that this is a window. You are in a window right now. Okay? You are in a window from when you found the bird until when the bird is going to be released, because that is your time of being in connection with it in the most literal sense. Like, once that bird is released, there's probably never any opportunity for you to have any sort of interaction besides just your memory and maybe that feather. That feather it's a wonderful thing to keep. So what I would, how I would definitely approach this is, one is, like, make that release event. You definitely want to be part of it. And though you don't have to bring what I'm describing to you, to these people, like, hey, this is a symbol of me on my birthday. You don't have to do this. This is your story. They don't need to know that, but you know that. You know that within the greater reality of the mystery of life, that all of this happened, and now you have meaning. This is not like interpretation meaning. This is not Ted Andrews meaning of, like, this is what a blue heron is. This is your direct relationship with the greater reality, and it is, it's as tangible as can be. So now I want to go and look a little bit deeper. So we know that there's a leg injury, which is associated with the bird. And then we also know that you just said to me when we first started our conversation, you said, you know what, I'm having a little bit of an issue with one of my eyes. In fact, one of my eyes, I almost am blind, or I can't see through that eye. Probably an irritation from a contact lens, is what you said. Regardless of whatever the cause is, it's happening now. It's happening in this window.
As a matter of fact, it was the bird's left leg, and it's my left eye.
There we go with that. And there's all sorts of different ways. Are you right-handed or left-handed?
Right-handed.
Right-handed. So your left side is your receptive side, because you throw with your dominant hand. You receive with your left. Right. If you were left-handed, it would be the other way around. So if you want, we could, like, look at it that way, or, you could just look at it like the left side is also thought of as the mother lineage. All of these, that's another way of looking at it, but you get to decide which way you're going to zero in, whatever feels most appropriate. But we have those two sort of symbols, that in which where we stand, the left foot. So maybe, something with, you mentioned specifically about the importance of a bird's legs and for the ability to take off, because a bird primarily moves through flight. The leg has to do with the beginning of the journey. All right. So we can see that And then we could also see something as it relates to, pardon the pun, seeing, vision. And so there's something with that. So these are also archetypes or symbols, living symbols, which are in play in this story of what is happening through this window. So if it were me, or at least, to bring a level of richness into your life experience, into your interaction between your inner world and the outer world, and not through the internet, not through like organizations or any of these things which are created, but like an actual spontaneous, real experience. Like, I would take this time period to like just contemplate, or to be open, or maybe even do like symbolic ceremony or ritual with things that represent maybe feet, or taking off, or maybe vision, or knowing where you're taking off to, maybe something with the left side, whatever that means. But these are all of the beginning with a very, very objective reality of what you just experienced, while being on this consciously, like, I am aligning my life and my actions to this ley line, which has always been there, but only now am I putting it into my perception, my reality, my consciousness, that I'm making choices of where I want to go and what I want to do based upon energy grids, which we find on Earth.
Mm. Yeah.
So I would say this is a really significant time for you, a really fun time for you, a really like rich and deep time to kind of think about all of the what I just described in kind of like this metaphorical way, applying that to what's actually happening in your life. Those sort of, how does taking off and how does seeing things and stuff like that, how has that shown itself in like the day-to-day reality of being Mark?
Well, I think I can expand on that a little bit further now that I've had this time to reflect, because Tara and I were noting how amazing the eyes on the heron actually looked. Like, they're three-dimensional. It's not like, from far away you can't really see the eye, and how far it actually comes off of the bird's head, but the eyes are like 50% outside of its eye socket. It's a very large eye. It's kind of impressive. It's like, she said it kind of looked like hard jello. I kind of think of it as like a little marble, but we looked it up because I said to her, I didn't see that bird blink once, and I was looking at his head the whole car ride, other than the times I looked up at the road, and I didn't see him blink once. And we looked it up, and it turns out this type of bird has 3 different eye sockets, or not eye sockets, eyelids, 3 different eyelids. And one of them is for nighttime, one of them is for daytime, and then I think the other one is like it's like on the side, and it kind of interacts with both. But they have 2 different eyelids, one for nighttime and one for daytime. I thought that was really interesting, and their eyelids aren't closed. They don't close their eyes from seeing the same way our eyelids may. They're actually sort of translucent, so the bird can rest but is still able to sort of see if there's any movement around it, maybe that would wake it up from its rest and put it in alert. But I thought that was very interesting, and to expand on it even further, Tara and I wouldn't call it an argument, but we definitely were a little tense on our way from the apple orchard to the river spot, because there's been this overwhelming sense between us of like comparison. Like, she sees all that I'm doing with my podcast and sort of becoming my own self-employed entrepreneur in the sense, and not that she's jealous, but she's like, well, I need to be able to do the same thing for myself, like she's feeling, and I remind her, you're not inadequate, you got this, I'm it's only a matter of time, and I'm very patient. I'm not, I don't expect her to like wake up tomorrow morning and be like, I know what it is, I'm gonna be a an author, you know, or whatever. You know, she's got a lot of intentions and directions, and I think it's more of a matter of like focusing in on one. But we had a kind of like a tough talk, so to speak, and I'm like, listen, you know, if you want to do this, you gotta, you know, really do it. I think I used the metaphor of you know, if you want to fly, you don't hang out in the swamp with frogs and toads, you go hang out with the birds. I literally said that, you know, and then, you know, a couple hours later we're saving a bird. And and it was really, my point was to tell her, like, you know, I see where you want to be, and your present state of mind is kind of holding you back, I felt like. And it's not exactly my place to tell her how to live her life, but to the best of my abilities, I want to support her and give her, you know, the advice I would give myself. And that's, you know, what came out in that moment of, like, you know, a little bit of frustration on my end and a little bit of complacency on both of our ends, you know, kind of led me to be like, you know, this is what you need to do, you know, like with a lot of like force. I was kind of like, just do this, like, you know, and I don't know if what I said was completely true to what she needs to do, but I think she agreed that, you know, what I was saying was helpful, and now we're on more of the same page than we were about certain things. But yeah, it's interesting how that brought us together too, you know, because it was really intense trying to drive around and find this bird a place
I would
to
imagine.
stay, you know. So it's like once we got to that farm, we kind of just like held each other and hugged, and we're like, wow, this is what a day, you know.
So a couple things to say about that. First off, that, you know, just an acknowledgement that, you know, relationships are freaking tough. But when we're in a relationship, when we have a partner, whether it's, you know, a partner for life or a partner for a period of life, you know, when we are actively integrated with another person, like, you know, our stories blend, and, you know, all of that sort of stuff. Our life path blends during our times together. So that's, you know, an inherent truth about you and Tara and your relationship. And it's true about like any relationships we're ever in, like for that period of time. But with that being said, based upon looking at what I was just saying with the bird with the leg and the bird with the vision, and then also maybe the left-hand side, I would say that this experience, though it aligned within your birthday, it sounds very pertinent to Tara. And so this window is her window as much as it is your window, as it is both of your windows. The when I say both, like, you know, the path which you walk together. We each walk. If you're in a partnership, you have the part of you which is still independent, and then there's the part of you that is integrated with another person. So I would certainly encourage Tara to look at this window as, you know, a period for her to, just as what you were describing, to calm your inner world before working with the bird, the outer world. Like, that's really all you can do in a situation like this. I don't think that you plan it. Like you said, you described where you are right now with the work which you're doing. Like, that wasn't exactly your plan. You didn't sit in a Starbucks 18 months ago and like, oh, I'm going to meet this person and this person and this person. I'm going to do this, this, and this, and it's going to lead me there. You may have had like a general direction, but life carried you. And so when looking at this from a ceremonial sort of way, it's about preparing the inner world in order to be carried to where it is you're going to go. So I would say this is a really beautiful and meaningful shared experience, which may have a different meaning or a different in the details for both you and Tara, but then also your combined path. So I wanted to share that. And then particularly this feather, particularly if she's the one who found the feather as a grounded or a rooted symbol of that experience, that this is the way which we bring true ceremony into our lives. And for me, I'll define ceremony is a conscious observation and reverence to the mystery of life. Ceremony can be anything. It's what you bring to it. And so that is my thought as related to you and Tara and the bird and this whole sort of experience. But I also want to link this back to mine and your connection, because you and I have a connection, obviously. So we're having this conversation. We do podcasts together. We're in each other's lives to a certain degree. And one of the things which I have noticed in listening to your stories and knowing my own is some of the similarities. And we had talked about this in the past. We had talked about both from a hawk. We both had a very, very similar hawk experience on the side of the road. So I know that there is a parallel there between how I interact with the aviation world and how you interact with birds. And so there's that. And then I also think back within my own personal history and other experiences I've had with birds. And once I've taken a bird to a rescue facility, but another time, or actually is twice. There's two other times where I have rescued birds where I had put my hands upon a wild bird and helped it out of a situation. Once it was a crow, which was caught in one of those plastic 6-pack containers or devices, whatever you call that. And another time was another injured crow. But when both of those happened, what period in my life when that occurred with me interacting and helping a wild bird, that was at the very, very beginnings of my exploration into the Susquehanna mystery. Like, this is when it started for me. I think of that as a marker in time for when that mystery was kind of, revealed to me, for lack of a better word. And I would also, since we have some parallels in our storyline, in our connection, like this could be, I would look at this blue heron experience as maybe this is a marker. You said you were uncovering your Connecticut mystery. And I say that with quotation marks because I don't know how big or how deep that goes. But you guys, whether individually or together or both, there's something, this could be a marker for like what is going to unfold for you. I had no idea at the time that I had saved those two crows or ravens that all that I would discover shortly thereafter. So, in looking towards the future and the trajectory which you're on, I would hold an expectation of something along the lines of a discovery of going of a deeper awareness and appreciation of the part of the world which you're currently calling home. There's that, and then there's one last thing, and then I'll stop talking, and I want to hear what you got to say. And it has to do specifically with blue herons. And so, I notice blue herons. It's a striking bird and has a unique form. So they're easy to identify, and they are. And whenever you see it, at least for me, I just take pause and notice. And that's just, how I've always been. But this, I don't know, since the summer, I've had two unique experiences with blue herons on my own. The first one, I was, me, Jenny, and the girls, we were down in kind of like in a valley with a creek in southern Lancaster County. And it's a place I actually called the Vulture Spot because I had a vulture experience there. But we were down in the creek, and it's a decent creek, maybe like 20 feet wide, not really that deep, but it's beautiful and it feels very, very remote. It's very quiet. And then a blue heron was flying up the creek, probably 10 feet above the surface of the creek. So just 10 feet overhead, and it's flying towards us. And I've seen blue heron fly from a distance, but I've never had the experience prior to this of seeing it fly more or less at the same elevation that I'm at. You know, I'm on a rock in the middle of this creek, and it's flying towards me. And to see the majestic nature in terms of how it flaps its wings and just like the size of the bird. And it was a unique experience for me. I'd never seen it, and it moved me. I was like, holy shit. And it was crazy because this blue heron was flying for some distance. Both Jenny and I, we kind of like see what's happening, like, you know, it's happening really fast. And we recognize how cool it is and how unique it is. And then all of a sudden the blue heron realizes we're there and completely like goes off its course and flies away from us. But there was this moment where it was flying right at us, and it did not know that we were there. So there was that was a big thing in probably the middle of the summer. But now the second blue heron thing happened probably about 2 weeks ago. And I think I've shared with you about this experience that I've had in Millersville, on the campus of Millersville University, with this owl. And there were 3 or 4 sightings of the owl, and then all of a sudden never could find it again. The owl just more or less disappeared. But we continue to walk in the same sort of path, and we're aware. You know, that's, to me, I think that's those are the realest interactions which you can have is with the natural world, because, you know, it's working on a completely different system than like our human false reality world. So when you have interactions, like you're working at a different level. So that being said, like 2 weeks ago, we're out taking like a after dinner walking through campus, and there is this one pond in the center of campus, not a particularly big pond, but it is it's marked by these 2 swans. We always walk by and we look at the swans. The swans live there. Seen them, I don't know, 100 times. And sure enough, 2 weeks ago, when we are approaching the pond right around dusk, there is a blue heron in the pond. And this is a highly traveled sort of pond. It's not like it's hidden. Like there are people all around, and there's this blue heron, and a blue heron is not going to stand near people. A wild blue heron that's not its normal behavior, but it let us, we were probably there for like 10 minutes, like 10 feet away from it. And it was just on the pond, not concerned at all about any sort of human beings. And though we never saw that heron again since those 2 weeks, there was this continuity, or at least it's the way I'm approaching it, of first this owl, which is, you know, it's a relatively rare bird, or at least rare in terms of seeing it, because they're often hard to find. But then, and then that disappeared, and then in the exact same area, like no more than like 100 feet away, there was this very uncommon interaction with a blue heron up close and personal for me. So when you share this story, about what you have experienced, and the nature of our relationship and the nature of our conversations, which is about like synchronicity and surrendering to the mysteries of life as a form of guidance through how to go through life. You know, I just find that rather fantastical. I think it's really, really, you know, I'm tickled to hear and see all this sort of stuff. I'm not going to go with like a meaning, but I'm just right now recognizing it as significant.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a couple things, you know, we had that experience where I was on the phone with you, and as I'm driving, I see that red-tailed hawk. I took a great picture of it. You saw the picture. You saw how close it was. Well, that was the same day that Tara and I begun this bottling river water venture, right? So the Farmington River, the next day after this Heron experience, we kind of just relaxed, didn't do much. And I talked to Michelle Gibson, who is very well known in the Tartaria realm of things. She's kind of talking a lot about Tartaria and other alternative history subjects on different podcasts. I had her on my show, and she suggested that I look into Peter Shampoo, aka maybe Peter Champois, if we're going to be French. But she recommended that same book that I had been recommended from you, and it was in the mail when she recommended it. So I'm like, oh, wow, okay, cool. So there's a little more confirmation there. And the next day, Tara and I decided to go to like a used bookstore. And it's not just any ordinary used bookstore. It's kind of a bookstore that remained hidden from me for a while because it, and this is going to sound dumb, but it didn't have a Google Maps location. The first few times I would look it up, Google Maps would take you to like the wrong side of the street. And it's a book barn, and it's in a very rural area. So if you're driving down this street and you don't know which driveway to go down, you're never going to find this book barn. You know, it's covered by trees and whatnot. So I guess things have changed since, because now they have kind of a sign off the road and a sign kind of pointing you. So it's much easier to find now. So we go to this bookstore, and I find a bunch of great books. The first one that caught my eye was this massive 1,000-page book, nearly 1,000 pages, and it's called The Centennial History of Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania. So I'm like, oh, look at that, Susquehanna. That's not a word you see often, especially in the title of a book. So I grabbed this book off the shelf, and I really, I went all out, considering it was my birthday weekend, and I got myself $100 worth of books. I got this Susquehanna book. I got the history of ancient Woodbury, Connecticut, a town, one of the oldest towns in Connecticut that also aligns with the Hammonasset line. But more importantly, for right now, and I also got a book about Tartaria, which I'll mention before we end this conversation. Remind me to bring that up. But I got this little book called The Quinnipiac, The Story of a River, all about the Quinnipiac River, that same river that we bottled water at the day that we had this Heron event. The great blue heron came into our lives the same day we went to the Quinnipiac River just by accident. And then, again, to bring this up, the first time we ever bottled water, it was the Farmington River, and that was the day we talked to you on the phone and saw that red hawk. So today, in this book, I find out that the Quinnipiac River is the same river as the Farmington River. What happens is there is a glacial deposit that pushed the Farmington River's course northward, which, like I mentioned to you maybe off air or on this show, it's the only river in the state of Connecticut that has that kind of feature where it goes northward, and then, especially considering its size, it's pretty interesting. But I guess we can call it the southern branch of the Farmington River is the Quinnipiac River. So it's just really, interesting that this little book came into my life and kind of tied all of that together. I learned about the true name of the Housatonic River, the Putatuck River, and then this Tartaria book. So, I haven't even looked through it yet, but it's a book called The Vinland Map and the Tartar Relation, and it's published by Yale University, and it's all about these, scholars kind of disputing or, trying to determine whether these maps are legit. One of the maps has, Mongolia on it, and it talks about the Tartars and how the Tartars were, the incorrect name for the Mongols, and it goes into a lot of interesting stuff that, it's rare to come by. You don't find books about lost maps and Tartaria very often. So this book barn had a lot in store for me. And yeah, that's more to come, because I really only yet to read from those books. The Quinnipiac book is really small, so I was able to get through most of it. But yeah, I found that absolutely fascinating. And then the next day, I get the Gaia Matrix arrives in the mail. Not, I think it came on my birthday, actually, either the day after or I don't remember exactly. But Mike, listen to this. To stack the, or actually, before, let me just leave it there for a second, because is there anything you want to add to that? Because the Quinnipiac River and the Farmington River connection to me is huge, but I wonder if you have anything to say.
So I agree with you in terms of it being huge, and just to like, there's again a lot of parallels. Like, I'm thinking about like some of the research which I was doing, and when the realization for me that the Chesapeake Bay and the Susquehanna River are the same body of water, that was a game changer for me, because I always thought of them as two separate things. I was like, whoa, they're the same thing, like they connect right here. But when you begin to see that continuity on a material level, that to me was a marker. So I hear you describing a similar marker. And I've got a book called The Conestoga River, which I'm reading, which sounds very similar to what you're describing. So there's just lots and lots of parallels. And what I'm thinking as it relates to like what are these parallels kind of point to? It's the fact that maybe there is an archetype, like in terms of discovering things, of like discovery of information, which kind of goes through these steps where you're beginning to see like, oh wow, these things I thought were separate are actually related, and it's all grounded first in the material reality, but then we start to go and get more and more insight into what is built on top of it. And so as you're talking about your interest with Tartaria and going deeper and deeper into it, and as all of this more information is showing itself and giving itself to you, that to me is probably going to be a big direction in terms of the mystery which you are uncovering.
Exactly. So, all right. So I mean, that's profound. I think we'll get into that more and more as this goes on, but the Gaia Matrix, which you so wisely suggested, came in the mail along with 3 other books that I also ordered. They're all about the different stone formations across the Northeast, but very interesting stuff. I open up the Gaia Matrix, Mike, and 2 things came as huge connections for me. All right. The first one being that Peter puts the Base Chakra in his sort of chakra map of the Northeast right in my hometown. So Derby, Connecticut technically is not a part of Milford anymore, but originally it was, and it's, a bordering town to where I grew up. So he puts this Base Chakra at the confluence of the Naugatuck and the Putatuck, or now it's called the Housatonic River, right there in Derby as the root chakra. And then, funny enough, to bring owls back up, I think we talked when you mentioned the owls. I told you about the owl I saw at the beginning of the year in a state park called the People's State Forest, and it's right next to the Barkhamsted Reservoir. Well, Peter says that the Barkhamsted Reservoir is the spleen chakra in this layout. So not only, and whenever I would drive up to Barkhamsted, I would start by driving through Derby, because that's how you get, on Route 8. Route 8's a nice drive up towards that part of the state, and then you drive into the Barkhamsted Reservoir, and it's so remote up there. You don't have cell service. It's, there's barely any houses near the reservoir. It's the most remote part of the state, which is, saying a lot for Connecticut because it's pretty populated. And yeah, it's very striking. I've only yet to read through the first couple. I think I'm on like the second chapter, but from where I skimmed through, I found those immediate connections, and I was a little flabbergasted. But yeah, it's awesome to find out, and it rings so true with everything I've felt about Connecticut, because he says in the spleen chakra one finds Hartford, Connecticut, and its water supply, Barkhamsted Reservoir. Peoples State Forest is here, as well as one of the wealthiest zip codes in the country, Litchfield, Connecticut. There are many beautiful places and people in this zone of all models, colors, and economic positions. There is, however, a preponderance of negative indicators which suggest an unbalanced expression of this chakra energy. Connecticut is a state of contrast in which the wealthiest among its population thrive and the least are ignored. I mean, that's exactly everything that I experienced when I was a delivery guy. I mean, some days I'd be in West Hartford delivering, 20 packages to one mansion, and then going to another mansion and dropping off 5, and the next day I'd be in New Britain, and I'd have like twice as many packages as the day before, but they'd all be little packages, and there'd be hundreds of stops because I'd have to go to so many different apartment buildings. And so I saw the contrast. I delivered in areas where there was drug addicts on the street, and then I would deliver in areas where there were drug addicts in mansions. It's like and then he also makes the connection to chemicals and drugs. And yeah, I mean, I definitely encourage people who are interested to buy this book because he says a lot of really important stuff. But yeah, man, I mean, it's connecting to the intuition that really brought me here, to bring back the idea of the archetype. And I think that when you search from your heart, you'll find the truth, and the truth is similar for everybody. There's different shades of it, but I think when it comes to the Gaia Matrix and things that we all are collectively a part of, there's a collective truth that we can all tap into when you're honest and connected to your heart, and way before, like you said, I wasn't sitting in some Starbucks plotting it, saying, well, if I meet Sam Tripoli, then I'll meet Michael Wan, and then I'll meet, it didn't work like that. But what did happen was I would go to these natural places where it was very quiet, and with the information I had learned from different podcasts I was listening to, I would speak my truth into the air, out into the world. I stood by the Susquehanna River and I said a prayer. It had nothing to do with you, no offense, Mike, but it was just like, I learned from you the significance of the river, went there and said a prayer, and not just for myself and my own, good fortune, but for everyone else. 'Cause I kind of understood that this place was connected to the rest of the world in that really significant way. And now here I am kind of connected to all these awesome folks who listen to our podcasts.
There we go. I think this is a nice place to wrap up this episode. This was fascinating to hear this story. I love this sort of stuff. And the next time we talk, I want to tell you about this past week of travels for me.
Yeah, we didn't even get to that.
We didn't even get there.
Oh,
no,
can you give us a little cliffhanger? Unless you really got to go. We got maybe 5 more minutes here. What do you think? Give us a little teaser.
So, well, it has to do with Jamestown and Francis Bacon and false realities and the Rockefellers, and where all of this stuff moves from just like ideas and research done on a computer to actual living experience and feet on the ground and seeing things with my own eyes, and then filled with unplanned synchronicity that could have never been expected.
Well, I couldn't expect anything less from the Synchro Mystic. All right, Uncle Mike, this has been another fun episode of Your Handbook for the Apocalypse. Thanks for listening, folks, and you know where to find Mike. Follow him on Instagram at Susquehanna Alchemy. Go to his website, show him some love. And if you're listening on the My Family Thinks I'm Crazy podcast feed, you better go over to the Susquehanna Alchemy feed and subscribe, because this episode or this podcast isn't going to be on this feed for much longer. Pretty soon we're going to put it all on Susquehanna Alchemy and get everybody following there, so we can keep things moving. But yeah, Mike, thank you, dude, for hearing me out and letting me share my story this week. Definitely feel like there's a lot left out, but we got down to the finer details. But yeah.
Well, let me say one last thing before we hang up. One, this is great, and I love hearing the stories, and I love reflecting back on it. But even more so, today is what? Today is October the 12th, 2021, if you're listening to this in another time. But if you're listening to this in real time, or relatively real time to when it's being released, on October 31st, in 3 weeks, I'm doing a live in-person presentation in New Cumberland, Pennsylvania. If you can make it, then I would love to see you there. It's only 30 spots. I'm going to be talking about consciousness, reality, and then specifically the Susquehanna River. And then the last part of it is going to be led by, I'm doing it at a wellness center called the Be Present Wellness, and the woman who owns that, she will be doing a sound ceremony at the conclusion of it. So I would like to include a link to that for people who are interested, who live somewhere in the Northeast. You could come and see it, and I'd like people to come to it.
New Cumberland, PA. Yeah, folks, it's worth it. I've driven down to PA just to hang with Mike. It's worth it. So I'll be there if I can make it. You said it's the 31st?
The 31st, yeah. I'll send you a link for all the details.
Yeah, please do. I think Tara and I would be very interested in both portions, the sound ceremony and your presentation. Well, Mike, thank you, dude. This has been fun. And thanks for joining in that little birthday surprise thing that Tara put together, because I saw you were driving, so I appreciate you taking some time to join despite your busy day.
I wouldn't have missed it.
Oh, right on. All right, folks, you heard the man. Go follow up with him, and yeah, maybe we'll both see you in New Cumberland, PA on the 31st. Thanks for listening to the Your Handbook for the Apocalypse. This episode was very bird heavy. I think we'll call it something to do with birds. I don't know if we're going to be one of those podcasts that comes up with the title of the episode from something we say, or if I'm just going to describe the episodes, as that's been a challenge, but we'll figure it out. Either way, thanks for listening. Thank you, Mike, as usual. Talk to you soon. Peace.